the Badlands, home to some of the strangest creatures ever to walk this earth. Known only as bots, these marvels of nature have been fighting for many years. That was until one engineer managed to induce a ceasefire between the two sides, bringing with it a temporary peace. Unfortunately, due to reasons beyond the engineer's control, the truce was short-lived, and the two sides resumed the conflict. Now, the engineer has two options: continue to fight for what he believes in, or give in to violence and accept his place in the war. It's a beautiful day in the Badlands. The sun is high in the sky and shines down upon an abandoned hydroelectric power plant. Of course, the peace won't last, for the day's fighting has only just begun. While the bots at Twofold struggle to keep hold of a few worthless papers, the bots here are about to partake in another pointless battle. As predicted, the bots are soon on the move. The blue team is eager to get into battle, and they quickly make their way into the canyon that separates them from the red team. All of them, that is, except for one sniper, who stays behind, presumably to guard the base. Although once he finds a good spot, all he does is scope in on the side of the building. The red team, of course, are nowhere in sight as they are busy fighting the rest of the blue team. This, however, does not dampen the sniper's spirits, and he moves to a new, even more useless spot to defend from. On the other side of the chasm, the red team are ready for battle and run out to meet the blue team. But within the hordes of mindless drones, we see a familiar face. The red engineer from earlier has managed to escape the Battle of Double Cross Bridge, but is once again caught up in a fight he wants no part of. Even so, he is one of the first out of the gates, and he is partway to the blue team's base before he stops himself. Even though he has vowed never to kill, he is still programmed to do so, and every day is a constant struggle as he fights to overcome his programming. Eventually, reason overcomes his primal instincts, and he runs back to the base. Once he gets there, he places his teleporter entrance. He then enjoys a private moment to himself, before running to get some extra metal. He uses the metal to build a sentry. He doesn't like it, but he needs some form of protection in this hostile environment. For now, the engineer is content. He has bought himself time to work out how to end this war. It'll take time, but he hopes he'll eventually succeed. In the meantime, he's befriended a sniper. The engineer likes the sniper because he doesn't go looking for a fight, and instead, waits for the fight to come to him. The sniper just stands there. He's sad because there aren't any enemy team members to kill. In the valley, the red team is taking an edge in the battle, and soon they've pushed the blue team back to their base. The blue sniper finally has something to shoot at. He takes aim, but unfortunately he misses, and he is soon overwhelmed by the incoming wave of enemies. The red team gets ready to push into the base, but they soon notice somebody's missing, for the team's heavy has become confused and is repeatedly walking back and forth on the spot. He eventually snaps out of it, but on his way to the blue base, he takes a wrong turning, causing him to end up at his own base. He soon realises his mistake and turns around. On his way back to the blue base, he meets up with a friendly medic, and they are soon participating in the fine sport of spawn camping. As they do so, a blue soldier attempts to defend his base, but the medic has already popped his Uber, causing the soldier's rockets to be wasted. This doesn't stop him, however, as he doesn't seem to be able to understand that when the enemy is shiny, they are immune to damage. The heavy and medic continue with their spawn camping, but little do they know, this particular spawn has multiple exits, and so their efforts also go to waste. By this point, the Uber has worn off, and the persistent soldier finally manages to kill the medic. The heavy sees this and tries to escape, but at that moment, half the blue team leave spawn, sealing the heavy's fate. After several repetitions of this, it soon becomes clear that no one is going to win this battle. The way the terrain is shaped, along with the evenly matched teams, causes most fights in this location to end in a stalemate, and that's exactly what's going to happen here. Back at the red base, the engineer watches the spectacle play out. He's been deep in thought for most of the battle, but it looks like he's finally cracked, as he's taken the same fascination in his teleporter that so many engineers before him have had. When the teleporter comes to full charge, he feels an overwhelming desire to step through it. And what makes the situation worse is the fact that he's built both the teleporter entrance and exit right next to each other. In fact, the exit is closer to the base than the entrance is. However, after some inspection, what at first appears to be a selfish act is actually a clever form of protest. His refusal to participate in the wars is his only hope of ending them, and he hopes beyond all hope that his teammates will notice. It's been several days since the events of our last location took place, but the war is still going strong. After a series of defeats, the red team has retreated to the familiar territory of CB Steel. Infamous for being an incomprehensible network of tunnels, the red team is sure they will have the upper hand here. Feeling confident, they arrive at the first control point. They've got some time to waste before the blue team attacks, so they decide to take a moment to enjoy themselves, though some classes appear to be enjoying themselves a lot more than others. This demo man appears to show no shame, and is working almost as hard as the engineer he's standing directly in front of. The engineer, of course, is the same red engineer from our previous locations. He is once again building his sentry, though he's chosen a rather peculiar position for it, as it's facing directly into the side of a wall. He's also decided to build a dispenser right behind it. One would think that this would block the sentry's line of fire, but the engineer is a very smart bot. He must have a reason for these choices. On the other side of a large brick wall, the blue team is patiently waiting for the round to begin. All of them, that is, except for one member. After their recent losses, the blue team has decided to enlist a new engineer to replace the one that was brutally murdered during the Battle of Double Cross. Of course, considering their name, Builders League United, the blue team wants nothing but the best, but as the entire team stares at the engineer slowly rotating in the corner, they can't help but wonder if they've made the wrong decision. Eventually, they decide that they won't stand for this nonsense, and just as the round starts, half of the team descends upon the poor engineer. Needless to say, the engineer is soon put in place, and he begins erecting his buildings. But, just like the red engineer, he's built them in one of the worst possible places, for he's built them inside his own spawn, a place where the enemy team cannot go. To make him look even more stupid, he builds a dispenser. Normally, this would be a clever move, but he builds it directly in front of the resupply cabinet, making the dispenser completely redundant. Meanwhile, the rest of the blue team is having trouble deciding which way to go. Of course, if they could read, they would see the giant letter A above the door to the first control point, and if they went through this door, they would see the entire red team waiting for them. In fact, a demo man does walk through the door, yet he still decides he's going the wrong way and retraces his steps to the other exit. The other exit, of course, leads to point B, a point that currently cannot be capped, though it seems the blue team isn't interested in point B. Instead, they have located one of the exits of the red team's base, and they're standing outside it, with the hope that one day a red team member will use it. Of course, the red team has no reason to use this exit, for they are already defending point A, and there is no reason to defend a point that cannot be captured. But a point that can be captured is point E, and this scout is well aware of the option, although there's one thing he cannot understand, and that is how to actually get to point E. Normally, a team would capture control points A to D, and this would extend a series of bridges that would make it accessible. But as we've already established, the blue team isn't aware of point A's existence, and so this scout has arrived at the closest possible point to his goal. However, his progression has been stopped by an invisible barrier that the bots sometimes refer to as glass. Unable to break through, the scout simply runs back and forth in the hope that something might change in his surroundings. Of course, it doesn't, and the glass remains. As he attempts to deal with this problem, he is joined by two other bots who have come to the same conclusions that he has. First of all, a pyro and then a scout arrive at the windowed room overlooking the point they're trying so hard to capture, but neither of them manage to outsmart the glass. By this point, several other members of the blue team are arriving at point E, and considering that it's technically capturable, some of the red team members have grudgingly abandoned their posts at point A to defend it. Most notable is this demo man, who attempts to defend a point from an enemy demo man. Unfortunately for him, his own explosions blow him backwards into the pit. It looks like he's doomed, but upon close inspection, it is revealed that he has in fact landed on a small outcrop of rock. Even so, with no way of ascending the vertical wall in front of him, the odds of survival look grim, and as predicted, he soon runs into the pit. Back at the blue base, the engineer is still working on his buildings. What he is doing though is unknown, for all of his buildings are already at their maximum level. One thing can be said though, and that is that for once, an engineer hasn't fallen in love with his teleporter. There's also something else of importance happening though, and that is that a blue soldier is about to exit through the door to point A. However, just like the rest of his team, he turns around at the last second. By this point, the red team are beginning to get quite bored. The blue team has yet to locate point A, and the red team are starting to wonder if they are really needed anymore. Meanwhile, the entire blue team have crammed themselves into this tiny room. It's been several minutes, but they are still convinced the way to access control point E is located here. The only team member who is not present, and is also not an engineer, is this scout, who is attempting to open this gate leading to control point C. It's a step in the right direction, but he is still far from deciphering the riddle that is CP Steel. However, as the scout battles to get through the gate, the rest of the team appear to have had a revelation, and sure enough, it appears that the blue team has finally located point A, and has launched a last-minute attack to try and capture it. Unfortunately, it is too late, and the red team wins the battle. We now move on from the arid desert location of CP Steel and arrive at the beautiful green hills of Viaduct. This bridge is a major strategic point, and if either team should capture this area, the odds would be greatly in their favour. But for some strange reason, the bots refuse to leave their spawns. Instead, they just stand there, as if waiting for something. Many months pass, and the once lush grass of Viaduct has been covered in a thick layer of snow. It is now that the bots decide to make their move. Clearly, the conditions weren't suitable before. The battle is soon underway, but unfortunately, despite the extreme delay, there are few points of interest. That is, except for this impeccable display of espionage demonstrated by the blue team's spy. He knows that if he doesn't move, the enemy team won't see him, and it appears to be working as the red team has no idea he's there. So, while the bots are fighting over the viaduct, a short way down the train tracks at the next station, a whole different battle is about to take place. Like many other teams before them, the teams here at Snowplow are once again preparing for the impending fight. And like many engineers before him, the engineer here is once again waiting to build his teleporter entrance. Meanwhile, outside the blue base, the red team is notably absent. Normally, they would be setting up their line of defense, but today, they appear to have stayed inside their base and are strangely stationary. Oddly enough, the only team member that can't wait to get going is the engineer. He can be seen here walking back and forth, as if eager to get into battle. Of course, we know that this engineer hates war, and what makes the situation stranger is the fact that he's not confined to his spawn. He can leave the base at any time to set up defences, and yet he stays within. The red team's idea of defence is already a strange one, but it's made even stranger when you realise there are some team members missing. A quick trip to the red team's other base reveals that 2 pyros appear to have spawned in the wrong location. Just like the rest of their team, they are free to leave the base at any time and regroup with their allies. However, they still refuse to move. The battle soon begins, and suddenly the red team collectively come to their senses and they begin making their way towards the enemy base, with the pyros bringing up the rear. But one bot has stayed behind, and unsurprisingly, it's the engineer. One can only assume that this is some new form of protest. Let's hope for his sake that it works. Back at the blue base, the blue team is about to attack. Sure enough, they're soon moving forward, only to take the wrong exit. It's okay though, because they soon realise their mistake, and once they've retraced their steps, they are once again on the move. But just like the red team, they've left someone behind. The blue engineer, who was so eager to build his teleporter entrance, is still inside the base. When evaluating the situation, it's easy to assume he just hasn't noticed that the doors have opened, but it's also possible that he, like many other engineers before him, has become aware of the sin that is war. Maybe, just maybe, with both teams' engineers protesting, the rest of the bots might start to notice what they're doing. However, right now the rest of the bots are occupied. For reasons unknown to the blue team, the red team has decided not to turn up, and so they easily push out a spawn. But this battle still won't be an easy win. The blue team's goal is to capture all of the control points, which the red team must in turn defend. But instead, the blue team crowds around the train, thinking it's a payload they must push. This proves to be the downfall of the blues, and once the red team arrives, their fate is pretty much sealed. But unfortunately for the red team, the blue team's stupidity turns out to be their saviour, for a soldier-medic combo who managed to get stuck behind a crate accidentally captures the first control point. The train takes off at top speed for its next location, and miraculously, but also surprisingly, no bot will run over on its journey. Nonetheless, once the train arrives, the odds of victory seem slim for the blue team, not because of any strategic advantage in the red team's favour, but because of their stubborn devotion towards attempting to push the train themselves. And while the blue team's strategy of pushing the train is failing, the red team's plan of destroying the train with a large bundle of rocks is close to succeeding. Every couple of minutes, the rocks will smash against the roof of the locomotive, causing high amounts of damage to the engine. One would think this would be very dangerous, and the bots are quick to confirm this suspicion as a blue pyro walks beneath the device, just as it activates. Never has there been a death more spectacular in the Badlands. One can only watch in amazement as the pyro's body is shot out to the side, landing on the point that his team is supposed to be capturing. But of course, his team doesn't capture it, and the blue team is once again defeated. We now return to CP Steel, where the blue team is having a second attempt at attacking the red base. The conditions are the same, however, this time the blue team knows which way to go to reach point A, and they eagerly await the start of the round so they can prove their worth. But that's not the only thing they're doing, for the engineer's obsession with the corner that the blue team relentlessly ridiculed him for seems to have become a craze within their ranks. They all appear to be enjoying themselves, but after a while, the engineer leaves the group. It's just not cool anymore now everyone's doing it, he thinks. For a while, he just stands there as he contemplates his life, but soon enough the round begins, and the hipster engineer starts building his sentry. The red team's defense is a very complicated one. It would take an expert to understand such intricate positioning. An example of this extreme skill would be this pyro, who seems to have embedded his face into the side of a wall, truly an expert in his field of work. Of course, the red team can't defend with just one pyro, no matter how good the positioning. For this reason, the red team has recruited a group of soldiers. These soldiers will form the backbone of the team's defense, but right now they appear to be busy staring at this cliff. However, it could be possible that they're just discriminating against this other soldier. Why would they do this? Possibly because this soldier has a pocket medic, and they are jealous of his privilege. Unaware of this, the lone bot runs over to his fellow soldiers to introduce his new partner. What follows is a few minutes of awkward conversation before they are all obliterated by the blue team. Like the red team, the blue team is using an unusually high number of soldiers. You can see them here walking up the cliff, and those that don't instantly fall off make it to the top and attempt to shoot the enemy below. However, most miss and shoot the floor beneath them. It's looking to be a good push, yet for some reason they don't stand on the point. Perhaps deep down they still don't believe it exists, and if that's the case, there is not a high chance of the blue team winning this battle. The reds have respawned now, and at this point, it's easy to see just how clueless the bots really are. First of all, this pyro attacks a soldier, and the soldier retaliates by emptying his entire clip into a wall. Somehow the pyro doesn't manage to kill him, and is instead killed by him as the soldier suddenly achieves sentience and learns how to aim. Secondly, you can see a classic case of bots getting stuck on things with this demo man, who walks back and forth but just can't work out how to get around this slope. This lack of mobility proves to be his downfall. Last of all, in the valley, a soldier medic combo stands motionless. That is, until they see an enemy and are suddenly reminded where they are. But taking a break from the battlefield for a moment, we return to the blue base. Here we see a staircase that the bots must traverse to reach the objective. A simple task, but even this proves too difficult for some, for the bots seem to have developed a habit of jumping on the barrels before they climb the stairs, and one of the younger, more naive bots attempts to copy his elders and unsurprisingly manages to get stuck. What's even worse is that even with him crouching there, the other bots continue to jump on the barrels, with one soldier literally leapfrogging over him, just so he can uphold the tradition. The bot's there for so long, he's joined by a friendly medic, who feels he might require some form of medical assistance. It doesn't look to be working, and the medic is about to give up, but suddenly, out of nowhere, the bot manages to break free. But instead of joining his fellow bots in battle, he returns to the resupply cabinet. After all, he needs to heal up after his thrilling adventure. On a side note, the engineer is still at spawn, building sentries in places the red team still cannot reach. The round is almost over, so the blue team decide to attempt one last push. It looks as though it might work, but unfortunately for them, their medic is killed in a most spectacular fashion. They do manage to clear the point though, and they've almost captured it, but at the last second a red soldier appears and blows them all up, causing the blue team to once again lose the battle. But things are not as bad as they seem. For the engineers, who protested so passionately throughout the war, have finally been granted their wish. It started gradually at first, a few bots here and there refusing to fight, but eventually it grew into something bigger, and soon entire teams were boycotting the war. This resulted in a few losses, but the teams knew what they were doing was for the greater good, and often, once the winning teams realised what their opposition was doing, they were quick to join them. Once the initial spark had occurred, the fire quickly spread, and soon the entire region was ablaze with pacifistic thought. More and more teams throughout the Badlands were refusing to fight, not because there was nobody to fight like the first ceasefire, but because they understood the wrongs of war. When the Red Engineer first began protesting, he thought it would be an impossible task to convince the entire Badlands that he was right. But he held true to what he believed in, and eventually his persistence paid off. It's commonly thought that bots cannot feel emotion, but that was in the past. The bots are evolving, and for the first time, the Red Engineer is happy. Hey guys, thanks for watching this video and sorry for delaying it so long. The previous part of this series was a huge success by my standards, and I'd be super happy if this video got even 1/10 of the views that video got. So if you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like, and if you haven't already, why not subscribe? This may be the last bot documentary for a while, but don't worry because I have plenty of bot related videos planned for the future. For now, here are some more videos about bots for you to enjoy. I'll see you next time. Thanks, and have fun.